You are a millionaire. At least that's what the numbers say. Your home is worth more than $1 million. The real estate apps confirm it every month. Your neighborhood is desirable. The market is strong. On paper, you've already won the game of capitalism. But right now, you're standing in your kitchen staring at a $60 utility bill, and your chest is tightening. You're doing quiet mental math. If I pay this today, can I still buy groceries this week? Should I skip the premium coffee and buy the cheaper one? You aren't poor. But somehow, you feel completely, devastatingly broke. This is the quiet financial contradiction spreading across America. A strange new form of poverty where people technically have wealth, but can't actually use it. And if you aren't careful, you could end up in the exact same trap. Meet David and Linda. They're 66 years old. For 35 years, they followed every single instruction in the American Dream Handbook. They worked stable jobs. They avoided risky investments. They saved carefully. And most importantly, they bought a house in a good neighborhood back in the late 1990s. At the time, it cost them $200,000. It felt like a huge financial commitment back then. But today, that same house is worth about $1.2 million. Every month, their phone sends them a cheerful notification updating the estimated value of their home. Each alert quietly reinforces the same message. You made it. You're a millionaire. But walk inside their house and the story starts to change. The HVAC system makes a loud rattling sound every time it turns on. A technician already warned them it needs to be replaced soon. The cost is around $15,000. So they ignore the noise and hope it survives another winter. Their property taxes have tripled since they moved in. Insurance premiums keep rising. Utility bills keep creeping higher. Their retirement income comes mostly from Social Security and a small amount of savings. That income barely covers the monthly expenses required just to keep the house functioning. David and Linda aren't unusual. They are the new face of a growing American financial paradox. Asset rich. Cash poor. In fact, according to research from the Federal Reserve, nearly 40% of Americans would struggle to cover an unexpected $400 emergency. Even people who technically have high net worth often live one repair bill away from financial stress. The reason this happens is surprisingly simple. Net worth and usable money are not the same thing. Your net worth is a number on paper. It's the theoretical value of everything you own. But cash flow is something completely different. Cash flow is what determines whether you sleep peacefully when a bill arrives in the mail. And this is where the illusion begins. When people see the value of their home rising, their brain experiences something economists call the wealth effect. It's a psychological phenomenon where rising asset prices make people feel richer, even if their actual spending power hasn't changed. Your house goes from $500,000 to $1 million. Your brain interprets that increase like a financial victory. You feel safer, more successful, more secure. But here's the uncomfortable truth. You cannot eat a roof. You cannot break a piece of brick off your chimney and trade it for groceries. You cannot send your mortgage statement to the pharmacy and ask them to accept it as payment. Your home equity looks like wealth. But until you sell it, it's locked inside the walls. This is what financial professionals call the illiquidity trap. Imagine two people who both have $1 million. The first person has it inside a brokerage account. If they need $10,000 for a medical expense, they open their phone, sell a small portion of investments, and the money appears in their bank account within days. The second person has $1 million inside their home. If they need $10,000, they face a completely different reality. They have to apply for a loan. They have to convince a bank they qualify to borrow against their own property. Or they have to sell the house entirely. That process can take months and cost tens of thousands in fees. In other words, both people are technically millionaires. But only one of them actually has financial flexibility. The second person is wealthy on paper, but financially fragile in real life. And yet the trap is even deeper than the math. Because the real barrier isn't financial, it's emotional. A house is never just a building. It's where your kids took their first steps. It's where birthdays were celebrated and holidays were spent. It's where memories quietly accumulate year after year. The small marks on the walls showing how tall your children grew. The neighbors who waved every morning. The familiar creak in the staircase you learned to ignore. When someone suggests selling that house, it doesn't feel like a financial decision. It feels like surrender. It feels like closing the most important chapter of your life. So many people stay. They remain inside houses worth over $1 million while living extremely cautious lives. They lower the thermostat to save money. They delay medical checkups. They skip vacations. They quietly trade their lifestyle for the ability to say they still own the house. In some cases, they are protecting an inheritance for children who would actually prefer their parents enjoy their retirement. Meanwhile, a quieter group of people are doing something that looks like failure on the outside. They downsize, they sell earlier than expected, they move into smaller homes or modern apartments. Their neighbors might assume they lost money. But in reality, these people often gain something far more valuable: freedom. By converting home equity into liquid savings or investments, they remove the constant financial pressure created by a large property. Instead of maintaining a house, they begin maintaining their peace of mind. Because true wealth isn't measured by how impressive your house looks from the street. True wealth is measured by how relaxed you feel when life becomes unpredictable. If a surprise bill arrives tomorrow, could you handle it easily? Could you help someone you love in an emergency? Could you take a trip without worrying about every dollar? If the answer is no, then the number on your net worth statement might not mean as much as you think, because the ultimate goal of money was never status. It was freedom. Freedom from anxiety, freedom from constant financial pressure, freedom to live without calculating the cost of every small decision. A house can be a wonderful place to build a life, but it was never meant to be the life itself. The most dangerous financial trap in modern America isn't poverty, it's the illusion of wealth. Because the goal was never to look rich. The goal was always to be free. Almost nobody talks about. Because the illusion of wealth doesn't just affect retirees like David and Linda. It's quietly spreading to younger generations as well. Across America, millions of people are chasing the same milestone: buying a home, owning property, building equity. For decades, this was considered the ultimate financial achievement. Your parents told you to do it. Financial advisors repeated it. Politicians encouraged it. Buy a home. Build wealth. And to be fair, that advice wasn't wrong. But the world where that advice was created is not the same world we live in today. In the past, housing prices and incomes moved somewhat together. Homes were expensive, but still reachable. Today, the gap has widened dramatically. In many cities, home prices have doubled or even tripled in just a couple of decades. But incomes didn't rise nearly as fast. So people stretched. They took bigger mortgages, longer loan terms, higher monthly payments, all in the hope that one day the house would make them wealthy. And on paper, many of them succeeded. Their property value increased. Their net worth increased. But their day-to-day financial life often became more fragile. Because a house is not just an asset. It's also a responsibility. A roof eventually needs replacing. Pipes break. Electrical systems age. Property taxes increase. Insurance premiums adjust. Maintenance never truly ends. Owning a house is like owning a machine that constantly requires attention and money to keep running. When everything is going well, it feels like a smart investment. But when income becomes tight or unexpected expenses appear, that same house can quietly become a source of pressure. This is why some financial planners have started asking a different question. Not, how big is your house? But how flexible is your life? Financial flexibility is the ability to adapt, to handle surprises, to take opportunities when they appear, to support your family when they need help, to rest when you're exhausted, to say yes to experiences instead of constantly calculating costs. And flexibility rarely comes from impressive assets. It usually comes from liquidity, cash, savings, investments that can be accessed when needed. The kind of financial cushion that lets you breathe easier when life becomes unpredictable. Because life always becomes unpredictable. A medical emergency, a job loss, a family crisis, a sudden opportunity to move somewhere new. These moments don't wait for the perfect financial plan. They arrive suddenly. And when they do, the difference between stress and stability often comes down to one simple thing: access to money. Not theoretical wealth, not the number written on a property valuation website. Actual usable resources. This doesn't mean owning a home is a bad decision. For many people, it can still be a powerful way to build long-term stability. But the danger begins when the house becomes the entire plan. When all the wealth is trapped in one place. When the balance between assets and liquidity disappears. That's when the illusion begins. Because the outside world may see a beautiful house and assume everything is perfect. But inside that house, the financial reality might look very different. Quiet stress, careful spending, constant calculations, and the lingering fear that one unexpected bill could change everything. True wealth was never supposed to feel like that. True wealth should create calm. It should reduce pressure. It should expand your choices. If your financial life feels smaller and more restrictive as your assets grow, something in the equation may be wrong. This is why some of the most financially secure people focus on a simple principle: balance. They build assets, but they also protect liquidity. They invest. but they also maintain flexibility. They understand that money's most important job isn't to impress others, it's to protect their freedom. Freedom to make decisions based on what matters most. Freedom to take risks when opportunity appears. Freedom to slow down when life requires it. Because at the end of the day, the real purpose of wealth isn't accumulation, it's control. Control over your time, control over your stress, control over the direction of your life. And that's why the illusion of wealth is so dangerous. It tricks people into believing they've already reached financial security while quietly removing the very flexibility that creates it. So the next time you hear someone say, I'm a millionaire because my house is worth $1 million, pause for a moment and ask a different question. If life surprised you tomorrow, would you actually feel financially safe? Because the goal was never to collect impressive numbers. The goal was never to own the biggest house on the street. The goal was never to appear successful. The goal was always something much simpler. To wake up in the morning without financial fear. To make decisions without constant pressure. To live a life where money supports your freedom instead of limiting it. And if you found this idea valuable, if you want to understand the hidden financial forces shaping modern life, then this channel is exactly where those conversations continue. Because sometimes the most important financial lessons aren't about making more money. They're about understanding the money you already have and learning how to turn it into something far more powerful, freedom. But there is one final idea that changes the entire conversation about wealth. Because most people spend their entire lives asking the wrong question. They ask, how much money do I need to feel rich? But the people who actually reach financial peace ask something very different. They ask, how little pressure do I need to feel free? Those are two completely different goals. One goal pushes people to constantly chase bigger numbers, a larger house, a more expensive car, a higher salary, a more impressive lifestyle. But the other goal focuses on something far more powerful, stability. The kind of stability that lets you sleep peacefully at night. The kind of stability where an unexpected expense doesn't instantly create panic. The kind of stability where you don't feel trapped inside your own financial decisions. Because when you look closely, the people who seem the wealthiest on the outside are not always the ones who feel the most secure on the inside. Sometimes the person living in the largest house on the street is also the person carrying the most pressure, the largest mortgage, the highest taxes, the biggest expectations, and the least room for error. Meanwhile, someone living in a smaller home with strong savings and flexible finances may quietly enjoy something far more valuable, peace of mind. That's the part of wealth that rarely appears in financial statistics. No website tracks it, no market index measures it. But in real life, it might be the most valuable financial asset a person can have. The ability to wake up in the morning without a constant background fear about money. The ability to handle surprises without everything falling apart. The ability to choose how you spend your time instead of being forced by financial pressure. Because at its core, money was never meant to be a scoreboard. It was meant to be a tool that gives you options. Options about where you live. Options about how you work. Options about the kind of life you build. And when money stops providing options, when it begins limiting them, that's usually a sign that something in the financial strategy needs to change. This is why the smartest financial thinkers often focus less on appearing wealthy and more on designing a life that remains stable even when the unexpected happens. They build assets. But they also protect liquidity. They invest for the future. But they also prepare for the present. Because the real test of financial security isn't what your life looks like when everything is going well. It's how stable your life remains when things don't go according to plan. And that's the moment when the illusion of wealth finally breaks. Because impressive numbers stop mattering when real life shows up. What matters instead is flexibility, preparedness, and freedom. The freedom to handle life surprises without fear. The freedom to make choices based on what truly matters. And the freedom to build a life that feels calm, stable, and fully your own. Because in the end, the most powerful financial goal was never to look successful. It was to live without constant financial pressure. And that kind of wealth rarely comes from appearances. It comes from understanding how money actually works. If this idea changed the way you think about wealth, then you're exactly the kind of person this channel was created for. Because every week we break down the hidden financial truths most people never learn about money, investing, and modern wealth. Not the flashy myths, the real mechanics, the real strategies, and the real decisions that shape financial freedom. So if you want to understand money on a deeper level and build a life that feels financially calm instead of financially impressive, make sure you're subscribed. Because the next lesson might completely change the way you think about wealth.